Yes. Hello, Dan. Nice to see you out there in Orange County.
Richie, my old friend, one of my oldest friends.
I know. So I always start the show with like how we met. So I met you and we were both about 12 years old, I think. And
At Glen Eden Intermediate School.
yeah, West Auckland.
We lived pretty close to each other, right? Like we both lived in Glen Eden. So I mean, probably either walking home or I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it really flourished in high school when we both went to Kelston Boys, and we were kind of like the alternative kids who didn't really fit into the rugby jock culture that we were surrounded with.
Right.
And yeah, I guess, and then we really like built upon that through I guess the exploration of the hardcore and punk scene, which you have followed to the nth degree, because you decided one day to move to Australia, and then you were like, nah, I'm going to move to America and take my band with me and become a tattooer. And then you got a gig on L.A. Ink, the TV show, and that really blew you up, huh? And then you've opened your own tattoo studio, Capture Tattoo, and continue to be in music. You've got your latest band, Sharp Shock. You had Dear and Departed, and you're doing fill-in work too with bands like H2O, who I think it's cool because those were the bands that we grew up like listening to, and now you're like playing in the band.
Yeah, I mean, getting back to when we first met, I always was. I think I was drawn to you and our friendship, because of your feisty, against all authority attitude. For the listeners that dude, I still back it. I still think of like, going to Kelston Boys, and we obviously had like a uniform, and it was pretty strict, and it was a pretty rough school, especially tough if you were unique, you know what I mean, and wanted to kind of push, go down that road as opposed to, like you say, the rugby or the whatever road like that most people assume that they need to go down. But yeah, I remember your bright yellow hair and your
Doc Martens.
Your blue Doc Martens and stuff. It was like, to me, that's always been, those things define people, right? And it doesn't matter what age you are. Like, you don't, we got taught getting into punk when we were young, like never to grow up. But of course you have to grow up, but you take that mentality of like, I'm put on this earth to be me, and your whole life you're going to get, you're going to get told that you can't really do that in one way or another, by whether it's the new job you're looking for, or whether it's a different school, or if it's a new, social group or whatever. So I don't know, getting back to your point of everything that you've said that I've quote unquote achieved, like I don't really look at it like that. I just see myself doing what I kind of always set out to do, which was gravitate towards the shit that makes me feel normal or feel happy. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Just to clarify, when I gave the fingers, I wasn't like, fuck you, Dan, for bringing that up. I was like, yeah, fuck the system.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah, because I'm the same. Because, yeah, you're right. We did go to like a really... I mean, I think all societies enforce... how would we say? They discipline us into being in a box of socially acceptable behavior. And I've come to learn that through my work more recently about how do we be men, right? Like when I do a lot of work now around constructs of masculinity, and we think about being teased and being shamed and being made fun of for not bragging about the girls that you slept with, or drinking alcohol, or any of those sorts of rites of passage. So yeah, you're right. We do live in a really conformist society, and I guess we built a friendship based around like not wanting to fit into that box, which was
and trying to hide our nose rings,
yeah, bro. Yo, you've got a great memory. Yeah, that's right.
No, I wouldn't say that. It's spotty at best, but yeah. I think it's funny, man. Like I do, obviously every time I visit home, which is I think always how I look at New Zealand, but every time I visit, and I go down those same old roads that we used to walk and take the bus, and it's just a trip, it's a trip. Like I honestly feel like I kind of have like a couple of different lives, to be honest. You know what I mean? Like going back I'm kind of really reminded about all the things that I really love about New Zealand. And then, obviously I kind of left for different reasons as well. So I'm kind of conflicted. I'm like, man, like I want everybody to kind of experience what I have experienced overseas, or, different friends or different, being educated by different things that sometimes I don't think you could do in New Zealand. And I mean, definitely now, sure, everyone's got the internet, everyone's got Instagram, everybody's kind of on the same page with everything, so it's rad. But man, when you're a 13-year-old kid from West Auckland, the future is a very weird thing to think about. You know what I mean? So I think I don't know. I always just took every opportunity by the horns, and I was just, I don't know. I guess I'm just more of a person that would like take an opportunity, and then if it didn't work out, or if it failed, or I failed, or whatever that word means, really, because I feel like it's all just learning. Like at least I learned from it, and now I know not what to do again. You know what I mean? But I'm just not the kind of person to like sit back and be like, man, that would have been cool to play on stage to that many people. Like, probably should have done that. It's just like, dude, we're not here that long. You know what I mean? Like, you got to do it.
So you just have a say yes attitude to everything, and that's what's led you to where you are now. Is that what you're saying? Because I feel like you've actually been really intentional. You haven't just said yes to chance. You're like, I'm going to put myself in these positions.
Really? That's interesting. I think so. I heard somebody say, I forget who it was, like a while ago. It's like, whatever you do, you've just got to do it. You know what I mean? There's so many people that say like, oh, I want to do this, and it's kind of this part-time thing, or it's this, they just kind of dip their toes in, or whatever. And I don't think that you really get anywhere or kind of achieve anything unless you are just all out into something. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm sure that you could probably agree with all your fight stuff that you've ever done. I mean, I remember you trying to train me in your garage in Glen Eden, you know what I mean? We were hitting a bag, and it was like, I was dead after every session, you know what I mean? But it's like, that's how long that you've been doing that, you know what I mean? And it's funny now that like, we're old, right? We're kind of old.
Middle-aged. I prefer middle-aged.
Well, yeah, like I just turned 40.
I ache when I get out of bed. I ache when I get out of bed, bro. So yeah, we're old.
Yeah, like I just turned 40 like a few days ago in quarantine, going like, cool. Like when we were 15, you couldn't have like convinced us that any of this stuff was going to happen. So, what was the point? Yeah, you got to dive in. You know what I mean? Like it takes a long time and a lot of lessons and a lot of experiencing to get where you are today. And I think if there's one thing that I think is underappreciated, it's kind of that, you know what I mean? And it's definitely weird seeing either just the way that the world works or social media's influence or whatever these days, when it's like, this guy is him, this guy is popular, or this girl has a hit song, and it's just like, I don't know, for me it kind of just sends me back a little bit to like, man, I wonder if she slept in a van for 3 months consecutively. I wonder if they were homeless at a period of time. And it's just, I don't know, it kind of gets you thinking about like just the way that the world works, and ultimately it does have it's like a double-edged sword, right? Like on one hand, I think it's healthy to be kind of proud of like some of the stuff you've done. And I kind of think that, remembering being a kid in New Zealand, that wasn't really celebrated enough as like it kind of is here. And I think kind of in America, it's probably celebrated to a fault, like where they're just like, everybody thinks they can be president, you know what I mean? And it's like, obviously we realized that that's not really the way to go. But it's like, yeah, it's just funny, man.
Yeah. Let's talk about that, because I feel the same as you. I feel that New Zealand does have a tall poppy syndrome. And whenever I've been in just hanging out in LA or New York or America or even Australia, like people don't seem to be so down on other people, and they seem to be far more aspirational. They seem far more encouraging of people to try and be big Do you think that's true of your experience?
I think it's totally true. And what's funny is, like, every time I fly back home, I feel like Air New Zealand has like some really awesome documentaries and stuff on the plane that, like, I mean, definitely no other airline would have, but obviously coming from New Zealand, it's all stuff that's super interesting. And there was a documentary series called Tall Poppy or something, and it had like, it was like a 6 or 8 part series of, you know, um, actors, musicians, people who generally have kind of just gone their own way, gone their own road. And the idea that there is a tall poppy syndrome, you know what I mean? And and they're just their thoughts on it and stuff, you know what I mean? So I saw that and I was like, oh man, it's not just me being sensitive, you know what I mean? Like, it is actually a thing.
Yeah, UFC middleweight world champion Israel Adesanya, he won the Halberg Award, which is like this prestigious New Zealand sporting award, and he called out
when I came back that time and you took me to the fights.
Yeah.
I said,
Yeah, that's right. Well, he was like, "Yo, tall poppy syndrome's a thing. It's bullshit." And then, of course, there was this backlash, like, "No, New Zealand's not like that." And then, a couple of weeks later, there were all these editorials about how arrogant and yada yada yada. It was like the perfect example of what tall poppy syndrome is, Living out there in LA right now, or Orange County specifically, how are things under COVID-19?
Well, as of today, things are going to get a little more interesting because there's a protest on Huntington Beach. It was actually at noon. So I kind of need to check up on how it went. But there's basically a protest to open California. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of people who are just like, enough is enough. Like, the numbers really aren't that high here. And it's one of those things, it's like people who obviously have their rights and are more science-based. And then there's a whole lot of compassionate people and people who don't want to add to this whole virus thing and don't want it to go any further. And it's just like a clash of like so many different people, and it's a weird thing. It's a really weird thing, like, for the most part, because the numbers are low and California, especially Orange County, is kind of spread out. It's pretty mellow, you know what I mean? Like, there's no like social unrest that I'm seeing in the streets or anything like that, you know what I mean? So, watching the news, I don't know. I've never watched the news. I feel like no one really should. You know what I mean? And I don't know. It's a weird thing.
Because it looks crazy down. It looks crazy down here. Because obviously, what dominates the news is negativity, and we're seeing these like armed protesters in different states in America, like storming the legislature to demand the opening up of the economy. Like,
right,
which is unheard of for us because we don't even, like, it's hard to get any sort of firearm, let alone wander down the street with your AR-15 and a fucking mask.
And that's like totally me. Like, I'm still a kid. Like, I'm from New Zealand, so I have the attitude of like, what's going on? All right, I guess I'll hang out until it gets better. You know what I mean? And it's just kind of not like that for a lot of people over here. But there are credible news outlets, and there are definitely a lot of great people doing great things. And ultimately, like, it's the people on the front line that are, that definitely have my sympathy and my support. You know what I mean? Because like anything, like anything that clashes with government or law, it's like the communities suffer. You know what I mean? The people suffer, and that's like the main thing that everyone needs to realize. It's a shame to think that people feel outraged about what's in their little bubble when, I mean, New York is obviously, it's been affected really, really badly. So, you know what I mean? It's like more people should put themselves in other people's shoes. But that's
I like
world in economy, right?
Yeah. That's something that we can talk about more as this conversation goes on. Because you obviously run Capture Tattoo, and you won't be tattooing for the foreseeable future, right?
Well, as of like a couple of days ago, they sort of, and I talked to my sister. I know there's like the kind of phase thing that New Zealand's going through now, right? Like 4, 3, 2, 1 kind of thing.
Yeah.
Ultimately, I think it's the same kind of deal. So, you know, a tattoo shop's generally or supposed to be one of the cleanest businesses that there are. So I mean, luckily we don't really have to do anything that different. I mean, we sterilize everything after every customer. You know, sweep, mop daily, disinfect everything. I mean, I like to run a tight ship. So other than the masks and you know, no food and drink allowed, which actually was already like that anyway. No kids in the shop, which that's another California law. It's not really going to change, you know. Um, so yeah, hopefully I can be back to work. I think they said I think May 8th was supposed to be a date. I mean, I don't know if Orange County's following LA, but it was like May 8th or May 15th. So, you know, I'm just taking this time honestly to kind of work on all the stuff that I'm usually too busy to put time into. You know what I mean? So personally speaking, I'm grateful of the little break right now because I think this is the only thing that would make me kind of slow down. So, yeah.
So what are you working on in quarantine?
I mean, dude, just the normal day-to-day stuff, right? Like stuff around the house and cleaning out the the spare room and getting into the, you know, the garage and just
life
stuff,
admin.
you
life
know?
admin shit. Yeah, right. You know, you're not inventing anything like psycho.
No, I've been riding my bike a whole lot, and I decided to start a cycling brand that kind of touching back on the music thing. We'll be sort of collaborating with different bands and stuff that we both like. So it's in its really early stages, but
what's the cycling brand? As in clothing?
Yeah, like cycling kits, you know, bottles, caps, just the kind of general cycle wear, you know, ride wear.
Paraphernalia.
I feel like everything has to have like a kind of an honest meaning, you know what I mean? And it's like, it's kind of cool that, I mean, there are a lot, as you get older, you know, there are a lot of punks and alternatives that get into different, you know, different activities. And cycling is one of them. And there's a huge community of like, you know.
Yeah, it kind of
goes bikes, you know.
Yeah, it goes cycling, jiu-jitsu, CrossFit. There's some Muay Thai in there, but as you get older, that gets harder. What else do old punk and hardcore kids get into?
I mean, craft beer is one, but you know.
Yeah, that's the thing. Because you're a straight edge. You called yourself straight edge from what? 15 years, 16 years old, 17 years old?
Yeah, 17.
Wow. 17. So that's 23 years of sobriety because you wanted to, not because you had to. You're not in recovery from an addiction. You saw. What did you see? Why did you choose at such a young age to reject the norm of intoxication as pleasure?
I saw going to parties and watching people get bottled and riots down Blockhouse Bay Beach and all kinds of crazy activity and debauchery. And what was sort of more evident than most of that was just the way that it seemed to affect people, affect people's personalities, affect who they kind of were in their essence. And you kind of grow up with people and you see the sort of like pressures of society or schooling or whatever else, and it just totally eats them up. You know what I mean? And I was like, none of the bands I listen to are singing about. I mean, in the early days, punk is quite, you know, it does promote this like self-destructive sort of ideal. You know what I mean? But a lot of the bands that we sort of gravitated into were singing about the opposite kinds of stuff, which were more positive lyrics and more DIY and think for yourself, and no one's going to help you do something if you don't help yourself, kind of thing. So to me, it was, I don't know, I was just really bummed that I saw a lot of my friends going down this like weird road that I knew internally I wasn't dealing with. You know, I didn't have the pressure to do that. And it was because of these bands and lyrics and that kind of thing that it gave me this, what's the word? It gave me a place. It gave me a place to feel comfortable, you know what I mean? And I could tell that a lot of the people that we grew up with really weren't happy and really weren't comfortable, you know, for a bunch of different reasons. But it seemed like drugs and alcohol were just the main thing that made a shitty situation way, way worse. And so, you know, I was just like, you know what? I'm going to go this way. I'm, you know, definitely inspired by more stuff than I could count back then. Why, you know, and I kind of let people do their own thing, you know, and but you know, we went to school with people who ended up on the headlines of, you know, the papers doing crazy stuff and suicide very, very regularly and all kinds of crazy stuff. I mean, you know.
Dude, I think back a couple of people who've gone on to commit like horrific, like you said, front page crimes. And I think about them in high school and like, it's not a direct cause and effect, but like the heavy drug use that they're involved in and mental health and it's very sad. And and it makes me sad still that, you know, 20 whatever years later, the situation's the same, if not worse. Like we still glorify intoxication in our society. We still kind of paint getting wasted as rebellion when I would argue that it's one of the least rebellious things that we could do.
Yeah, it's about kind of just holding yourself in a bit more of a high regard than that, you know. And I feel like the punk ideals kind of taught you that you know, taught you to question everything, taught you to understand that there is a different way, you know, rather than just kind of slipping into the same old, you know, the mold that society kind of has for you to, you know, like you said, like it's everywhere. It's in every country. You know what I mean? I think maybe smaller countries or smaller towns or whatever deal with it in a bit of a, you know, they deal with it a little more because of the, I don't know, like growing up in West Auckland, I felt limited, you know, I felt like I was sort of like held back, you know what I mean? Like, and you know, it's not like we had the worst childhoods in the world, and there's a whole lot of people that had, you know, had it way worse than us. But you know, there's a lot of people that don't look past next week, or don't you know, have no kind of goals or anything like that. So I mean, yeah, I feel very lucky that I kind of had a little bit of influence from that stuff that just showed me that there was a different way, you know. But ultimately, it's a global issue, right? Like it
is a global issue because there are big fucking brands behind like the marketing and sponsorship of alcohol brands or blah blah blah. And I don't know, it's a complicated one because I know so many people having, you know, I went on to work in alcohol and drug harm reduction professionally, and it's very much a self-medication tool, you know, like in a society that makes us feel like shit a lot of the time. Like not everyone gets to find a counterculture like you and I did that makes us feel supported. What was it you think that kept you on that path? Because a lot of people I know who adopted straight edge or adopted the straight edge lifestyle young quit that path and have decided, and you know, for whatever reason moved into, I guess, a more I don't know how to word it. I guess they started drinking and started doing drugs. What is it that kept you steadfast in your values?
I just feel like I was constantly motivated, and I was never willing to settle. You know what I mean? Like, and I think the mindset of like, you know, all systems go 100% of the time, like don't, you know, whatever it takes kind of thing. It's cool, but the older you get, you realize that way of thinking does kind of take a little bit of a cost. You know, it comes at a cost too, you know. But I think ultimately, you know, you don't get rewarded from anything unless you make the effort in the first place. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like that vicious circle, right? Of like, you don't feel like it's comfortable to not drink unless you're around a few people and or you search for people or discover people that are saying, I don't want to drink. You know what I mean? Like, you need an identity, right? And I think the thing is, like, most people don't really have that identity that they can latch onto, or most people don't feel comfortable with their own self going like, I'm enough. You know what I mean? It's this thing. And I'm sure there's, I mean, you know more than me with the statistics of, like, you know, social media with young kids or whatever, being like, I need to post this picture of me, you know, in wearing next to nothing because 5 girls in my class are doing it, or, you know, similarities with that kind of thing. Like, we didn't have to deal with any of that stuff. For us, it was like, what are we doing this weekend? Get drunk, take drugs, do burnouts in cars, and then wait till what? We wag school next week? Like, I don't know. Like, that's what I remember school being. I remember disliking school. And I remember the time, like, as soon as school was done, that was my time. Like, that was me to be like, I'm going to trace every band logo that I've ever, you know, bought a record from. I'm going to perfect, you know, whatever logo I'm doing. I'm going to paint. I'm going to screen print t-shirts. I'm going to give back to my friend or give back to my friends or you know, create something that my band can push, or something that lets people know, like, hey, this is me. You know what I mean? And I think comes that a little bit of pride, you know? And I don't know. So yeah, I think I just did, I don't know. I'm always looking for, like, what's next. You know what I mean? Not in a sort of a ravenous way. I'm just kind of like, man, like, this is, you create your own life, you know, you open doors for yourself, and no one else is really going to do it for you. And if you're just honest with the stuff that you do and you work hard, then good shit's bound to happen.
I love that.
You know,
I love that. That's some PMA shit right there.
Good.
Good. Uncle Toby would be proud. So you're very much self-taught when it comes to art, because you know, we looking, you know, anyone looking at this video will probably see some of the art on your walls. Like, were you professionally trained when it came to art and tattooing? Like, how did you walk down that road?
I mean, you know, I took art in high school, but it was basically just like still life painting that, like, I didn't enjoy. And it wasn't until I found music and I connected the two, you know, like, I connected record covers and album art, or I studied the tattoos that were on bands and tried to study, like, where they came from and the history. And, you know, it wasn't until that sort of started, you know, that was kind of the jigsaw puzzle, and I was kind of putting all the pieces together, that I was totally, like, enamored with it. You know what I mean? There was nothing else. There's nowhere else for me to go at that point, because I was just in so deep. But no, I never went to art school. You know, as you know, we all got tattooed super young, you know. I had a weekly appointment at Sacred, you know, and half of which was because obviously I wanted to get tattoos, but the other half of the reason was because I wanted to learn, and I wanted to sort of try to absorb, you know, everything that they were doing in there, because to me it was such a mysterious and creative world that, like, there was nothing else like it. You know what I mean? There was nothing else like it. Like, we would go to tattoo competitions at the Brownsy in Browns Bay, you know, and it was just a completely different audience and different crowd, you know, and this is mid-90s, right? So it's like late 90s. It's like, when if you're lucky enough to find something that you love, you got to hang on to it, and you got to ride that train until it stops. You know what I mean? Because being inspired by people is ultimately everything in life, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I truly agree with that. So that's what you're doing. You're riding the train that you jumped on when you were a teenage kid, and taking it as far as it'll go, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I kind of did some schooling with it. You know what I mean? Like, but you know, there is obviously a little, like I said before, like a little reward in kind of like discovering something yourself, you know, and it kind of
yeah
back on that DIY like attitude. It's like, who do you trust? Who do you go to there's no one to go to, what are you just going to give up? No, you got to, you do it yourself. So, so yeah,
I love that.
I'm still constantly inspired by, I mean, not only Dean and Dan, who were, you know, the people who were completely inspiring me as a kid, but everyone, the people who I work with, you know, the people who I visit and who I see on travels, and, you know, even discovering people on Instagram, you know what I mean? When it's 2 a.m. and you go, you know, you found yourself somewhere and it's just like, man, this guy rules, or this girl is like so good at this style of tattooing or this style of art. And I think, you know, as you get older, and I'm not sure if you can agree, but you lose some of the youth, right? Like you for whatever reason, and everybody goes through different things and different experiences, but you lose some of that like innocent youth. And I feel like it's just really important to kind of hang on to it however you can.
By innocent youth, do you mean like that sort of like, wow, excitement, first time you see something vibe? Yeah. Okay, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, like being open to being stoked. You know what I mean? Like not being like, oh, well, why is this 21-year-old like got 200,000 followers, or why is this guy booked till December? It's like, dude, none of it really matters if you're doing what you're doing and able just to like make a living from it or whatever. It's like you've got to, you know, give respect where it's due, and you've got to just, I don't know, tell yourself that like you can be inspired by a lot of different people and a lot of different things.
Do you feel like there is a hyper competitiveness in not just in the tattoo industry, but in the modern world? Like, oh, yo, when we're always trying to compare ourselves to one another, and it's bad for us mentally and emotionally?
100%. Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's funny, like, you know, when we were younger, the most that we were kind of exposed to as far as like taking care of ourselves would be like, you know, some of the bands were singing about veganism or vegetarianism. Some of the bands, like another extension of that might have been like yoga or some sort of, you know what I mean? But there wasn't really like, could you imagine someone like you speaking at our high school now to us? Like back then, it would have been a mess. You know what I mean?
Did I ever tell you that I went back and spoke at our old high school some like maybe a year or two ago?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm thinking when you told me that, I'm just like, I remember that assembly hall. I remember people throwing apples at the principal from the back row. I remember just like, you know what I mean? Like it was just crazy. And like,
do you remember? Do you remember? This is nothing. Anyone who's watching this is like, what? Do you remember I organized a band to come and play called Noxonal 9, which
I was just thinking about that. I was at the stage going like, this is everything I've ever wanted from school. Just to sing a band. And then we kind of we found out what Noxonal 9 was, and we were like, oh my God, this is crazy. We're like 15 years old or something.
It was like a spermicide or something, right? Yeah, and I got in a fight with some kid there at that festival, at that school concert. Anyway, I don't know where the fuck that came from, but there's a hyper competitiveness to the modern age, which I think it does encourage us to try and be more, but at the same time, like if we're constantly holding ourselves up to, I don't know, Instagram influencers or people who've got opportunities that just aren't available to us, it can be bad for us, right?
100%. 100%. Yeah, I think, you know, like I was saying before, that sense of sort of pride that you're doing something, I think it's really important to
do it for you rather than for the people looking.
Yeah, there's this new Instagram page called Influencers in the Wild. Have you seen that?
No, it sounds great though.
I mean, for one, it's the of influencers being caught doing what they do, and a lot of the time it's nothing, and it's, you know what I mean, they're standing in the middle of a street, and while the cars wait for them, you know, to take this like provocative picture or something, you know what I mean? And I don't know, I think it's super important to kind of know your role. You know what I mean? And it's like I just it's sad to think that a lot of those people are. I don't know if they feel fulfilled doing that. You know what I mean? But it's it would be cool if they could use their platform to, you know, do better things, or, you know, or look
Yeah.
out for people that kind of truly need it, that would never even be able to afford a phone bill, rather, you know, let alone like, you know.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I don't begrudge people making money off social media. Like, if people want to offer me money to endorse a product or something that I would genuinely lose, I'm like, yeah, cool, I'm into it. But so much of it has just become, I don't know, I always weird out when people just seem so I don't know, unconsidered about what they're endorsing or what they're promoting or what they're trying to sell. It just strikes me as, yeah, I don't know, a really negative symptom of how shallow society can make us. And then I think about the millions of kids looking at those images, thinking that's what they need to be like.
Yeah, ultimately that's where my opinion on that kind of goes to, is that, you know, with so much cool stuff out there, it's just a shame that a lot of, you know, a lot of the stuff that isn't necessary or needed kind of gets a lot of you know, a lot of limelight or whatever, or things are kind of glorified, which kind of just don't ever need to be glorified. You know, I'm totally down for people making money whatever way they want, um, but you know, I guess that's speaking from someone who feels like the creative people of the world should have more of a platform, you know what I mean, rather than the dude who just wants to film fights or film, you know what I mean, like just
Or
film.
like, I heard about this shit called,
You know,
I
like,
heard about this shit called OnlyFans yesterday. Are you familiar with that?
uh-uh.
Uh, I'm not an expert on it, but a friend was telling me it's basically people who are influenced, or anyone can do it. You don't even have to be like have a huge following, but it's people will pay you for like extra content on your Instagram. But basically,
Oh yeah, yeah,
it's basically like influencers turning their social media into like porn or soft porn from the sound of it,
right.
and
Yeah,
it,
there's a couple of different apps like that, I think, and like I know some people who are on like Cameo and whatever
oh,
else.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and that, like, I just see that as like, man, I would love to, like, I don't know, I would love to try to give back to, and you know, if there's a young kid, not sure if there would be, but if there's a young kid in Glen Eden, West Auckland, who's, you know, of finding anything out, like I'd kind of be stoked on being that person
I
to
lost, I lost you there. The Skype cut out. If you, it was a young kid in Glen Eden, West Auckland, what?
Oh, it just makes me think, like, I try to think of what you know, the best something could be, right? Like if there's a kid in his room, like wondering, like, or wanting to learn about stuff that I know, like I would love to be able to, like, you know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sure. Give back to him.
who otherwise couldn't get that information. Like that would be cool. But you know, hey, it's 2020, and there's always going to be someone who wants to film their butt. So yeah, you know what I mean? Like, whatever.
Hey, and all power to them. But yeah, I agree with you. There is, yeah, no, we could use these platforms for greatness, but often they get co-opted down to the lowest common denominator.
Yeah,
Hey,
exactly.
so before COVID-19 hit the fucking planet, you were on tour with H2O, our friend Toby Morse's band.
Yeah,
Uh, how was that experience? Was it weird touring the band that we listened to when we were like fucking kids?
it was like, honestly, it was unbelievable. Like I'm kind of more of a person that really reflects on stuff afterwards rather than in the moment. Um, but for anyone who's listening who doesn't know, it was called the Persistence Tour, and it was so this happens every year in Europe. There was 11 shows, so I think like maybe 9 countries, 8 or 9 countries, and it was Agnostic Front, Gorilla Biscuits, Wisdom in Chains, Street Dogs, H2O, Billy from Biohazard, and a couple of younger bands, Count Time from L.A. and another couple bands, and it was just like, you know, I was nervous going into it, but it wasn't really because of the, you know, playing in front of people, because I've done that forever. It was more just, yeah, like you said, like thinking back and going like, totally insane that I've listened to some of those bands. I mean, I posted a picture of me, I think, playing a show at the Ellen Melville Hall, right, in Grey Lynn, 97 or something like that, 98. And I was wearing an Agnostic Front t-shirt, you know what I mean? The last day of the tour, I got a picture with Vinny Stigma from the band wearing my band's shirt.
Wow.
You know, and that was like, Toby hooked all that up, you know what I mean? Because he's super good like that. But it was ultimately, it just totally defined something that I feel like I've felt and I've believed for like the longest time. You know what I mean? It totally was like just you know, it just confirmed that everything I've kind of done was either not worth it, because it's, you know, I'm sure there's going to be different things that happen after that tour, and if they want me to play for them again, like I would love to, but it just, you know, to take that piece of time, you know, that little section of time, and just go like, yeah, I did that. Super cool, like super cool.
Yeah, I was stoked for you, bro.
I'm not really a person that kind of like, oh my god, like I don't really do that. So yeah, it was rad.
No, I can relate. I used to train this guy Brad Riddell, who fights in the UFC now, and some years back he was fighting like one of the most famous Muay Thai fighters ever, and I was cornering Brad as he fought this dude John Wayne Parr, and I looked over my shoulder in between rounds, and I was like, oh my fucking god, that's like Wayne Parr over there. I think that's the same sort of, that it's like a surreal experience, huh? You're like, wow, how did life get here? Like, what is even going on right now? Is that kind of how it felt for you?
Totally. We shared a bus, and it was like, not only are you on stage with all these guys, but you wake up, you know, you sleep 2 feet away from them, you know what I mean, in the bunks and stuff, and you wake up, and especially on a bus tour, it's like, excuse me, you wake up in a new city or a new country, you know what I mean? So not only are you looking forward to a show, I mean, those shows are big, you know, it's like 2,000 to 3,000 people every night, but you're also in a brand new country that you can get to explore from the moment you wake up until you need to be, you know, at the venue for sound check. So, you know, just being able to sort of like get to know people on a personal level, you know, on a human level, it's just like, man, that's, I mean, that's what it's all about, you know. It's sort of, to me, and going back to the punk sort of like ethics and stuff, and you know, the way that you say there's no idols, you know what I mean? Like, we're just people, we're all the kind of same. To be able to have great conversations with some of these people, pretty cool, you know.
I was gonna say, because while there might not be any idols and there isn't the traditional barriers between artists and fans in the punk and hardcore scene, are you still like, yo, this dude was my hero or is my hero? Like, is it a strange dynamic for you, like playing alongside people that you looked up to?
It is, man. It is, and how I said before, like, hanging on to that enthusiasm, you know, like, it's, you know, being on tour is not, I mean, especially at this age now, you know, like, I've been in a few different bands and had, you know, a varied amount of success, but none of it was enough for me to have, you know, a mansion in the hills or any shit like that. You know, it's all been a labor of love. It's all been because I wanted to do it. And literally everything that I've ever sort of like made from it or whatever has gone back into it. And it's about kind of like I said, keeping the train moving and knowing knowing that you're accountable for it, and there's no one else is going to step in. That happens to pop stars or one-hit wonders or whatever else, and that's why they're never ever heard of again. You know what I mean? I'm in the shop and the phone's ringing. I'm not going to get it, but that's what's going on.
That's right.
I don't know if it's tweaking out the sound or not, but
no, you're fine.
So yeah, it's just about being accountable for it. You know what I mean? And just kind of really like, being stoked that your thing is your thing, and not having an arrogance at all, but just having a pride of like, we're in the world together, and it's possible for me to be on stage with someone that I looked up to when I was a kid. It's possible for me to help drag an amp for someone who I've, off the stage, for someone who I've loved his guitar playing since I was like a baby. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Possible. So I mean, if anyone can take anything away from that, it's just like, man, don't limit anything about your life. You know what I mean?
I love that. I think that's a good note to finish on. Don't limit anything about your life. Dan, thank you so much. There's heaps more I'd love to talk to you about, but
I know, I feel like we could just talk for like days.
Yeah, I think we could. Let's do this again. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me. Give my love to your beautiful wife, Skully. And
thank you very much.
I am fucking optimistic that the world will kind of resume some semblance of normality, and I can come out and visit you guys again soon.
That is definitely going to happen. And you know what? When you started learning Spanish, and when we were in high school and third form, and everybody else was like kind of studying different languages, and you were one of the few that studied Spanish. Well, today marks my 80th day streak on Duolingo learning Spanish, right?
Muy bien, mi amigo.
Here's what I mean. You inspired me, straight up you, when you come and visit me and we go to restaurants and stuff, and you're having the most in-depth conversations with the waiters and the waitresses and whatever else, and just general people. You inspired me to learn Spanish. And I was like, you know what? I can't live in Southern California and basically eat Mexican food 4 days a week and not know Spanish. You know what I mean? So thank you for inspiring me this far along in life. And thank you for inspiring me back then. When we were young and innocent and had the youth.
I love the thank you, bro. Right back at you, man. Like, looking at how life has worked out for you and your relentless pursuit of fulfilling your own dreams continues to inspire me from afar, man. So
awesome, man. Thank you.
I appreciate you and your friendship, and I look forward to giving you a hug before too long.
Sounds good. Thanks for your time, brother.
No worries. Thank you, brother. Bye.
Talk to you soon. Bye.